Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to my new channel. If you want something in particular, comment below, and I will oblige. Thanks again. Land Rover Defender L663, Buyer's Guide. The new Defender was a phenomenon at launch almost 4 years ago. How does it fare as a used prospect? Key considerations: 3.0-litre inline-6 turbo diesel, all-wheel drive. More capable on any surface than you'll ever be. Well thought out and comfy cabin. Still, on point, after nearly 4 years. Whichever model you picked, it seemed like you couldn't lose, because as soon as the first road tests came out, it appeared that, not for the first time, Land Rover had an absolute winner on its hands. The new Defender was named World Car Design of the Year in 2021, the third such win for LR after the Vela in 2018 and the Evoque in 2012. It was also Women's World Car of the Year in 2021, and it grabbed lots of other magazine awards around the world. We know that Land Rover can build cars that are technically and emotionally appealing, but the big question of course is, can they build cars that last? L663s are not made in the UK but in Slovakia, at a plant opened in late 2018. You'd like to think that the factory's newness would reduce the reliability issues that seem to have affected, to a greater or lesser extent, just about every Land Rover ever built, but we'll see if that's been the case with the L663 as we move through this guide. The first L663s are 3 years old now. That should certainly be long enough to form a picture of the ownership proposition. Does the promise stack up against the reality? Engine. Despite the considerable weight they were pushing, neither the D250 or the D300 diesel were found wanting for get up and go. The 479 pounds featuring 300, which was actually faster through the 0 to 62 than the 4 or 6 cylinder petrol equivalents, did everything the D250 did perfectly well, just with a little more ease. In 130 guys, the D300 would return cruising MPG figures in the low 30s, dropping to high 20s overall in mixed use, hardly spectacular and quite a bit worse than the mid-40s you might expect to get in an identically engined Range Rover Sport. It was mainly down to the Defender's extra weight and, more pertinently, its inferior aerodynamics, which kept the D300 130's top speed down to 119 miles per hour, compared to the D300-powered RRS's 135 miles per hour. The Defender's tank was bigger than the RRS's though, so you could still expect to get at least 500 miles from a fill. A bit less of course if you were using the full brake towing capacity of up to 3,500 kilograms, 750 kilograms unbraked. When the L663 was launched, Land Rover said that consolidating more systems onto fewer EQs was integral to automotive electric design. We were all hoping that that wouldn't translate into a recipe for electrical disaster. It's a fact that faults in the electrical systems of complex, modern cars like this feature in just about every buying guide we do, and Land Rover has been at the forefront when it comes to offering cutting-edge electronics without necessarily providing the kind of backup you'd hope for from the dealer network when it goes wrong. Faults, for example, like those with the BSIG, belt integrated starter generator, a mild hybrid alternator substitute, which would throw a warning light. Further investigation would usually reveal that the 48V battery wasn't charging. It should be said that these BSIG problems are not exclusive to LR. Audi has also struggled with them. Mechanically, the 6-pot diesel Defenders have acquitted themselves pretty well, but they haven't been faultless. More than one owner has experienced injector failure. One high-mileage owner had 2 starter motor failures and a cracked intake manifold in just under 90,000 miles. They also went through 3 sets of front brake discs, but they did say they were making use of the full towing capacity. Another apparently extremely unlucky Germany-based owner said he had had 4 instances of exhaust gas blowing into the cabin via a leakage at the DPF intake, clogged and replaced turbocharger, and 3 replacement intercoolers. There has also been the odd gearbox control module issue, which would allow you to select drive but then drop back into park when you tried to go anywhere. Many owners noted a jerkiness when reapplying throttle from a near stop, and magazine road testers noticed a bum-clenching delay in the return of power when entering roundabouts. A recall was issued to change the airbox on the D6s because the original part was rubbing on the radiator top hose. The EV battery was warranted for 6 years or 62,000 miles. Fixed price servicing is available from the official network for the new Defender, but no online costs are provided by LR. When we tried to inquire on the website, that function wasn't working. On more than one specialist independent site, the new Defender was conspicuous by its absence. The first service wasn't supposed to happen until 21,000 miles or 24 months had elapsed. Some of the owners who felt uneasy about that and who wanted to do some sort of service at half that mileage period were able to take advantage of cheap oil filter service offers that LR was coincidentally doing at the time, cheap in this context being around £150. Insurance costs are a hot topic with Land Rovers. It's a mixed picture with the new Defender. Some owners have seen their renewals doubled, others have only had the sort hike that the rest of us have seen on non-LR vehicles, still others have been told they'll qualify for a considerably lower premium if they put a sub £50,000 value down for the Defender. Chassis. The D7X body structure was the stiffest one ever to wear a Land Rover badge. Rammed with LR's impressive and established range of all-terrain technologies, it delivered an extremely impressive dynamic performance on pretty much any surface. The 90, as ever, was the most agile of the three available lengths, with a smaller turning circle and superior breakover angles to minimize the chances of beaching the underbody on big ruts. Air suspension was standard on Defender 90 First Edition and X variants, as well as on all 110 and 130 models. Ticking the airbox on a steel-sprung base 90 wasn't a bad shout if you were interested in a smoother ride on tarmac, although in comparison with the old Defender even a steel 90 was a paragon of civility. The other advantage of Air was that it allowed you to crank up the ground clearance by 70mm. On the downside, who can think of an air-suspended vehicle that hasn't had expensive problems at some point in its life? Sure enough, Air Defenders haven't escaped scrutiny in this area. Some have had the words "suspension fault" flash up on the screen, quite randomly, accompanied by a refusal by the suspension to respond to inputs and leaving the car in the ride height it was last in until you turned the car off, locked it, and left it for a few minutes to consider its options. An over-the-air software update eventually sorted that one out. Some cars have randomly thought they were grounded out when they weren't, responding to that by going to the extended lift mode. Separately, air compressors have failed, something that's not exactly unknown in the world of air suspension. On other LR products, it's not been that hard to change the compressor yourself in order to dodge the very high prices that dealers charge for this job. But we somehow doubt it will be that easy on a new Defender. YouTube might be your friend. Worth a look anyway. Big SUVs from other companies were more comfortable and handled better on normal roads, but the Defender was easily the comfiest of the vehicles with anything like its level of off-road ability. There wasn't much feel through the wheel, but the weight and response are terrifically well matched to the Defender's size, and the Pirelli Scorpion Zero all-season tires were excellent in bad conditions, albeit a little puncture-prone. But then so were the Continental alternatives. The car's overall performance in this area was more than adequate for the vast majority of real-world users. The Defender was quite susceptible to crosswinds, being so large, but the weaving didn't reach an overly worrying level even at maximum speed. Problems with the lane assist system have been reported, but it could be easily turned off. If you habitually drove a Defender on poor roads, you might eventually hear a clunking from the front end. That would usually be a failure of the front lower control arms. Some owners have experienced an odd vibration when traveling at between 50 miles per hour and 70 miles per hour on cruise control going uphill, or when overriding the cruise for an overtaking squirt. The vibration was described by one as if a battle is occurring within the software, one trying to increase fuel and the other not allowing it to speed up. That owner wondered if the diffs were partly locking up, but the display said no. Those who have had this issue have also said it went away of its own volition. What feels like transmission wind-up when turning at slow speeds at a street intersection, for example, or sometimes when reversing, can usually be fixed by doing a double flush, oil change and a software update. Bodywork. If your daily driving involves the regular use of tight car parks, you need to think carefully about Defender body sizes. With the spare wheel in place, the 130 is over 5.3 meters long. It doesn't feel excessively large from behind the wheel though, and if you're looking for consolation, the Range Rover is even wider. It's a thing to bear in mind though, as is the requirement to book a Defender into a more expensive, tall vehicle carriage on the Channel Tunnel train. The 130's load capacity ranged from 389 litres with all 8 seats in play to an all seats down maximum of over 2,500 litres, which was a lot. The 90's cargo space was severely compromised by back seat bases that didn't fold up, which stopped the seat backs from folding flat. As a result, the entire cargo platform with the seats down as far as they would go sloped at an impractically steep angle. LR put that right on 2024 My cars which have folding forward seat bases and a raised boot floor. A bit mad that they didn't have those to start with though. Grizzled LR types like to say that the company always releases new cars before they're finished. Sonically, the optional fabric sunroof worked well open or closed. Generally speaking, wind and road noise were well controlled. There have been reports of windscreens cracking for no apparent reason, sometimes after a period of hearing strange crackly noises from the top corners of the glass. Warranty replacement screens cured that. Rear wiper, washer jets could clog up. Front light modules blew up. The external trim piece on the A-pillar could either start fluttering at speed or fall off entirely. Door seals could squeak annoyingly. One owner said that the right rear door wasn't closing properly and that there was a fault with the outside door handle. Interior. With the L663, JLR became the first global car maker to use CloudCar's latest cloud-based services platform. Scanning with smartphone QR codes displayed on Pivi Pro allowed Spotify, TuneIn and Deezer users to access and stream content even if their smartphone was at home. Updates were done cloudishly too, automatically keeping your Defender up to date even if you hadn't bothered to do the same with your smartphone apps. Drivers and indeed passengers could navigate to, or dial into, meetings and conference calls with one screen touch. The system would accept what 3 words inputs too. It wasn't just left like that either. Plenty of over-the-air updates were sent through to add extra value to the suite of stuff that was already on the Pivi Pro system, which effortlessly, seamlessly and simultaneously provided both Android Auto and Apple CarPlay content. Sadly, the screens on early cars were not immune to blacking out, and not always in a way that you could fix by turning it off and then on again. Actual physical shorts were discovered, requiring actual spannering. Once done though, that was usually jobbed. Some owners had trouble with the diamond button on the steering wheel, which was effectively a change source control for the audio, phone, etc. If you were listening to the radio, say, and a phone call came in, the system would switch to the phone but then not switch back to audio afterwards. Or it would switch back to the radio if Spotify, for example, was manually selected on the screen, but it wouldn't go back the other way. The interior was very comfortable, not just in the specifics of seat comfort but in terms of the amount and use of space. The cabin managed to be rubber matte, utilitarian and luxurious at the same time. You probably wouldn't want to spend much time in the back of a 90, but there were no such complaints in the 130 or even the 110. Recalls were issued to replace seat rails that were causing a clicking noise when you moved around in the seat. In at least one case, the rectification procedure revealed stripped, unfastened securing bolts. Before folding the rear seats forward, you were supposed to remove the center headrest, but it wasn't immediately obvious how to do that, so some owners didn't bother. This inevitably led to rubbing and, in the worst case scenario, tearing of the upholstery on the back of the headrest. One owner had to wait 6 months for a new headrest to arrive, with a promised bill of £400 to go with it, but in the end LR did it for free under warranty. Some complete seats have been replaced under warranty due to staining. Rear seats were often hard to slide back and forth, especially when the car was new. Regular use and/or silicone spray eased the action. Some audio speakers rattled on heavy bass tracks. Again, non-functioning securing bolts were found to be at fault, and again, once good bolts had been put in and done up, the problem went away. Other audio issues, like the sudden departure of the offside speaker from the soundstage, a known bug, were generally fixed by OTA updates. A Pivi Pro reset holding the power button down for 15 seconds was worth a try on stuff like this and the info screen blackouts, but it didn't always work. Whereas the heating controls have now been buried into the screen hierarchy on models like the Range Rover. Physical HVAC knobs and buttons have been retained in the Defender, even the new 24 version, which will be good news for many. Overheating wireless charging pads were a thing at one point, but it looks like that's been sorted. Some sat-navs didn't display satellite maps in their entirety. More than one owner has had both key fobs die on them. In one case, this was traced back to a faulty 5-amp fuse in the KVM, keyless vehicle module, fuse panel. My thoughts. So, new Defender, hit or miss. The top spec models weren't cheap, the fuel economy wasn't that great, and the boot space in the 90 was a bit pants, but all that's been true of Defenders past as well as present. As a result, many if not most new Defender customers walking into LR showrooms were conveniently preconditioned to expect these foibles. On the plus side, they're wonderfully capable off-road, another Defender trope, but also super comfortable on the road, very much not an old Defender attribute. The cabin storage opportunities for bits and bobs were well thought out and copious. The 4-cylinder diesels have had a rocky time, but the 6-cylinder units we've focused on here are by and large smooth and strong. Some of the faults that came up on early cars especially went away when warranty replacement parts were fitted, suggesting teething troubles at the brand new factory in Slovakia, where not just new Defenders but also the full-size Discoveries were being built. Volkswagen, PSA and Kia were also building cars in Slovakia by the time LR arrived, giving rise to unlikely-sounding theories that the country, the world's largest car producer per capita, might have run out of skilled workers by the time LR set up shop. Whatever your view on that, and on the fact that Land Rover traditionally gets low ratings on customer satisfaction surveys such as JD Power, the impression we've gained from forums is that new Defender owners are in the main happy with their purchases. Forgiving what faults there have been as minor and easily fixed. Several serial Land Rover owners on these forums have declared the new Defender to be the best Landy they've ever had. Many of the posters have said they've had no problems at all.